Welcome to another episode of the Dynamic Chiropractic Podcast. With me today, I have the incredible Dr. Jeff Langmaid from the Evidence-Based Chiropractor. Dr. Jeff, thank you for your time for today, for joining me. I just want to say, for all the listeners, you're in for a treat today.
I appreciate it. I am pumped to be here. I appreciate you reaching out. It's awesome to be able to connect with people around the world through chiropractic, and I'm an open book, so let's have some fun.
Awesome. I can't wait. So with just starting off, if you could just let us know a little bit about yourself, how you got into chiropractic and also where you studied and so on.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I actually always wanted to be in healthcare. So I was this is ultimate geek territory. But in fifth grade, I did a presentation on endoscopic knee surgery because I wanted to be a doctor. But as time went on, I realized, man, staring down an 8mm tube for the rest of my life is not that appealing. So my father actually had a back injury when I was in college, and he said he went to a chiropractor and saw improvement. He said, you got to meet this guy when you come back to home from school for winter break. So I went with my dad to this chiropractor, and he happened to be the alumni president for Palmer College of Chiropractic. So within about 2 minutes, I said, hey, great to meet you. I'm, Walter Langmaid's son, Jeff. He said, great to meet you. Have you ever thought about being a chiropractor? And no, actually not at all. Yeah. So within 2 minutes, he called Palmer, Iowa, and was like, you got to send this guy information. This actually happened. So I got some information. Lo and behold, the more that I learned about chiropractic, the more that it resonated with what I already believed about health, but couldn't put a name to. So it really started to unfold, and everything made a lot more sense to me. I just was like, I never knew what to call it. And that's where that journey started. Now, come to find out, a few years after that, there was a secondary piece of this, that my great-grandfather actually was a chiropractor who graduated in the 1920s and studied under BJ. And
no way.
On audio only, these are artifacts. If you have any video, these are artifacts of his business card and everything else. So I had a legacy that didn't continue. Nobody else in my family had graduated from college at all, but my great-grandfather, who passed away right after I was born, who I never had a relationship with, he had been a chiropractor for decades, his whole life. So that started to unfold that and became very interesting. I went out to Palmer, Davenport, to start school there. When I was out there, they announced they were going to open up Palmer, Florida, and I didn't start. I didn't start in Iowa. I ended up just living there for 6 months and waiting for Florida to open. And I moved down back to Florida. I grew up in Rhode Island, but I went to University of Tampa for undergraduate, so I was familiar with Florida. So I went to Palmer College of Chiropractic, Florida, and I graduated in 2006.
Nice, I love that. Wow, that's sorry, just sort of backtracking a little bit. That's absolutely incredible that you said your grandfather,
great-grandfather,
great-grandfather was a chiropractor as well, and you didn't even know, and now you hear sort of living on the legacy, which
that's right.
I think is absolutely beautiful. So
thank you.
So in regards to where you are today, how did you get into the more research-based chiropractic?
Yeah, I guess they say, necessity is the mother of invention, I guess is the saying. So, when I first graduated from school, I actually practiced as an associate in the doctor who made that phone call that one day. So awesome. Years later, I went to chiropractic school. I moved away. I went to chiropractic school. I came back and I practiced with him for about a 6-month window. He's a mountain climber, and he was going to go climb Mount Everest. He was doing the 7 summits, and wow. Everest climbing window is March to May, and I graduated in December. So he said, well, why don't you come work with me for 3 months, take over the practice while I go away to try to summit Everest, which is a 3-month thing. And I did that. So when he came back, I ended up staying about another month and a half, 2 months. So I practiced as an associate. Then I opened up my own boutique cash practice in Providence, Rhode Island. I went back to Rhode Island at that point. So I went and had my own practice for about 4 or 5 years in Rhode Island. But what generated and stimulated the research side, I thought I would never go to PubMed again in my life. But when I had an interesting opportunity, maybe a while ago now, maybe 12 years, where I came back to Tampa, Florida for a variety of reasons. And I was probably one of the first, I estimate, 25 chiropractors in a true orthopedic group. So now the VAs here in the States, there's a lot of chiropractors in medical settings. Back then it was very, very rare. So I joined an orthopedic group, and this is where I say, invention is the mother, necessity is the mother of invention, is that I started to practice there, and I'm like, great, like, how do I build my practice? And I started to do some marketing externally, and they were like, we're a $50 million company. You can't just take our logo and put it on. Like, you have to go through the marketing department to get stuff approved and all. And I'm like, I'm never going to get anywhere. And I'm like,
Yeah, of
this is,
course.
so I said, how do I build my practice? Well, let me look at the other 50 other docs that practice in this group and see if I can get referrals. So I started showing up to spine conference and grand rounds, and I discovered they were talking a lot about research. I'm like, I thought I'd never look at research again in my life, but I found that they were making a lot of clinical decisions, and they debate what they saw in the studies and everything else. So I was like, I don't know. I'm pretty pragmatic. I guess maybe I'll look and see if there's any. I didn't even know. Is there good chiropractic research? And I'll take it, translate it into normal speak, and then show it to them with hopes that that can start bridging the gap. Long story short is that began to work. Then I started to do that with external physicians in my community, and that started to work. And that sort of propelled itself into now what's the evidence-based chiropractor as a brand and service and all that. But it really just stemmed from scratching my own itch, I guess they'd say. I had a problem I needed to solve, which was, how do I build relationships and get a practice up and running in a system that won't let me really market externally? Well, research was the answer to it.
There you go. That's amazing. Cool. With you mentioned about creating relationships and obviously communication amongst not just from chiropractor to patient, but also with other professionals as well is so important. What did you find being the most valued way of creating a relationship with patients and or other professionals?
Great question. So I think I view them as two different things. So I think from a professional side, I always think of that as B2B marketing, business to business marketing. And on the patient side, more B2C marketing, business to consumer. And I think the strategies, as I've seen, are really divergent. They are two very different strategies. So from a physician side, there's a couple of things. One is understanding that I always like to say it's about finding your dance partner. Not everybody's going to like you. You're not going to like everybody else. That's okay. And that's great. That's a good thing. So number one, having patience and not getting discouraged when you start going out to other physicians is really important, especially for younger chiropractors. It can be intimidating. It's kind of scary. It's like, and then if you have some meetings that don't go well or something, it's like, oh man, this is really uncomfortable. So some of it is having patience and a thick skin. The other is having a process, because often what happens is if somebody does that, they stop, and then it's 20 years later and they haven't built a single relationship in their community because of what happened in the first year of their career. So it's about patience and having a thick skin, but a system and a process. So, that's where we talk about, from a physician relationship building perspective, about everything from building a target. And I'm happy to go into any of these, building a target list. So you track what's going on using case notes, research, and meetings to build that relationship over time, all in different ways, and having processes week in, week out, month in, month out, that ensure that you're staying top of mind. Because otherwise it's an activity that you're going to quit tomorrow. But like going to the gym or something like that, you need, like with anything in your practice, you need systems. Systems are how you build, grow, and scale. Doing things one at a time is a great way to waste a lot of time. So a lot of it comes down to, from a core perspective, number one, having patience and understanding that you're not going to like everybody. Not everybody's going to like you. That's a good thing. Understanding also that this is about finding out what's best for your patients. And here's what I mean by that. And I know I'm talking about a variety of different things here, but
No, go for it.
I spoke to a doc just an hour ago about this specific topic, and he had been in practice 21 years. And he was I give him credit for starting the process, but here's what's scary to me. And this is, it's deathly frightening. I think about this and I say, in 20 years, he's seen thousands of patients, and those patients are weird, meaning they saw a chiropractor. That's unusual. It's not 90% of people see chiropractors, about 15%. So, they put a lot of trust. They went out on a big limb to see him. And the beautiful thing is, us as chiropractors, is we'd probably all say, hey, this isn't a crapshoot. 90% of our patients love what we do. So the odds are in our favor. But then the compounding thing is, for 20 years, he let them go off into the wild. They got bad advice with most chiropractors most chiropractors don't have great referral networks. So these patients are weird. They trusted you. They went out on a limb. They got great results. They want to know where to go. And then when they need somebody else, you kind of just say, well, the guy closest down to the street or somebody else you don't even know. And we know, and the other thing that's the scariest part about this is, we know how poor the medical system often is treating neuromusculoskeletal issues.
Yeah.
So this doc is doing all the right things, is a heartfelt provider. He has thousands of people in his community that like him. And probably a majority of them have seen another doctor that said, don't go back and see the crazy chiropractor. What the heck?
Yeah.
That never needs to happen. But how do you make that not happen? You have to know the people in your community. You have to build referral relationships. And then you can recommend, hey, if and when you need a primary care or GP, here's who I love working with. You're not forcing anybody to see anybody, but you build your network. And I call that offense and defense. It's offense because you get to build referrals, relationships that come back to you. That's marketing, offense. And then defense, because you prevent your patients from going into some idiot who gives them bad advice, which happens all day, every single day. And none of it needs to happen. But if you don't do anything, it happens all the time. That's the thing. This doesn't happen automatically that you build these great relationships. It does take effort. It does take systems and processes, because if it's just a little bit of effort, you're probably going to fall off in a month or two. You need the system and the process to ensure success long-term. There's a lot to throw at you, but I'm happy to go any direction on it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. I'm just I'm almost trying to make mental notes and then physical notes as we're going along as well, so I can just try and keep up with everything. But there was one thing that I wanted to touch on specifically. Obviously, with all the research that you do, and I mean, any research that we read into, it uses very technical terminology. With the research that you use, and how would you portray that, or how would you explain that to patients that come into your office?
Yeah, great question. So I like to say you need to take the content, which is the research, and put it into the right context, which is the consumer message. So an example of that, I'll give you a very direct one. We've used this for blogs. We've used this for email headlines. We've used this for everything. Let's say there's a study on cervical disc issues and cervical radiculopathy. That means nothing to 99.99999%. So here's how you would translate that as an example. Is my arm pain coming from my neck? That's what a patient's asking. So when you title things appropriately in terms of the content that you're putting out, if you're shooting a TikTok or a YouTube video or something like that, you can drip in the medical term later on, but my headline and title of that piece of content now you might go after the search term cervical radiculopathy, so that's a different thing. But in terms of just a communication at a base level, you need to communicate where people are at, because if you're 10 steps ahead, it's never going to work. And unfortunately, us as chiropractors, we have such a curse of knowledge. We went to school with other chiropractors. We usually graduated college before that, which a majority of people don't do. We're professionals. And then we hang out with other people in our socioeconomic bracket, and then we look at x-ray reports and we read diagnostics that are all in medical speak. And then we try to, we say that to a patient and their eyes glaze over immediately. So the way that, for example, on a cervical radiculopathy piece of content or communication, I might say to a patient, a lot of, what's going on. Let's say they have arm pain, arm pain, and I think it's coming from their cervical spine. I might say something, it depends on the context of the conversation, but something to the effect of, hey, a lot of people I chat with are curious if their arm pain is coming from their neck. They might have saw a variety of different providers that thought it was their wrist or their elbow, and they could never solve the issue. That's because the nerves that go to your arm come from your neck. Now let's take a look at your images here. See those big squares? Those are the vertebrae of the bones in a lateral x-ray image, right? Those big white squares, those are the bones. See that space in between where I put my finger? That's where the disc resides. And that hole on the backside that I'm circling with my finger, that's where the nerve comes out. Believe it or not, if that nerve is being compressed or pinched at all, it can actually cause symptoms just like a telephone line where it leads to. And the nerves in your neck lead all the way down your shoulder, arm, and your hand. So quite often patients come to me and they're curious because they have pain in their arm and they have no clue it can actually be coming from their neck. So that's a really generic example, and you could go a variety of different directions. But I think it's really, really important for us to take a step back as we're communicating and be able to accurately discuss what's going on with the patient. And that specifically, I'm going to say, especially in the evidence-based world, I see as a massive challenge, because there's a good thing about taking pride in knowing what's going on as a healthcare provider, but sometimes the pendulum can go so far that we don't realize we're communicating with human beings. And I'll give you a very specific
Absolutely, yeah.
example of what that is. When I worked at the orthopedic group, let's say I was going to review an MRI image with a patient. This would literally be the way I'd start every single patient evaluation or interaction when I was reviewing like an MRI. Great to meet you. I'd have a medical assistant, my MA or CA, the chiropractic assistant there. I'd say, great to meet you. We're going to do 3 things today. 1, Tanya told me a lot about your medical history. I'm going to ask you a few questions to make sure that I got that 100% correct. Number 2, we're going to take a look at those pictures on the screen and see what's going on. And then number 3, I'm going to give you my best plan of action, whether it's here or somewhere else, to find relief. I'm not telling them I'm going to do Kemp's test. And then I'm
Yeah.
saying, it's like, they would have no clue, but it's like when I just would say that, they'd be like, thank goodness somebody
Yeah.
that's actually just going to ask me what's going on, show me what's on the pictures that I have no clue whether it's upside down, left, right, or backwards, or whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And then they're going to actually tell me what I should do about it. Wow, what a novel
Yeah.
idea. But so often we just jump over these very basic fundamentals.
That's such an interesting way of putting it, and you use the term meeting the patient where they're at. I love that. That just makes so much sense. And like you said, just being able to take a step back and just understand that the person in front of you, the likelihood of them actually understanding the terminology that we learn in school, they're not going to know what that means.
Right.
Or they may know it on a very basic level.
Yep.
And I don't know about yourself, but obviously when we were at school, when we were learning all this stuff, and we were in our clinic here and we were talking to patients, do you believe that's where it might stem from, and why does that then carry on into when we're actually in clinic in the real world, so to speak?
I think a lot of it comes from, I just think that there's a real curse of knowledge, which is we become so accustomed to, doesn't everybody know this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you just take for granted that people, let me put it this way, look at people are still curious on how often they should exercise and things like this. You know what I mean? Or like, can I exercise? There's just, people have such a lack of fundamental knowledge about their health and body. And I think often we just have such this curse of knowledge where we come out knowing so much that it's like we think we're stepping it back, and we're still 30 steps ahead because we've spent 8 years trying to put this into our minds, and it's what we do all day, every day. It's like an auto mechanic, if you don't know anything about cars, and they work on cars 8 hours a day, and they're talking all technical terms, or a developer. A even better example would be, I hop on with my businesses and I'm talking to developers, computer developers, and they're talking about the protocols, the Python languages, Ruby on. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I want to know how we collect an email address and follow up, equivalent to your patient being like, I want to know how this stops hurting and I can get back to playing soccer. Like, I don't know,
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about with all this other stuff. So I think a lot of it comes with just our experience can blind us to, we don't realize how low the bar is with other people. And quite frankly, I think in some instances there's also I'll be very frank, I don't think this happens all the time, but I think there's some of hiding behind. I think there are some chiropractors and all healthcare providers that hide behind advanced language to just move along and push through, and or to show how much or something else. Where it's, I've gotten, in all interactions, including speaking with other healthcare providers, etc., and I'm not saying this is right for everybody every time, but I've continued to get more and more casual as I've gotten older as a provider, and far less, I'm going to say, formal, and and I've found that over time, at least in my experience, that has continued. That doesn't mean sloppy, but it's continually served me better because we're all just human beings talking to other human beings.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's really the crux of it is why, the 4 questions every patient want to know, what's going on with me? Can you help me? How much is it going to cost? And how long is it going to take?
Yeah.
All evals should lead to answering those 4 questions. If you miss any of those 4 questions, something's going to break, quote unquote. Like they're either not going to continue with the care to maximum improvement. They're going to drop out early. They don't understand why they're there. You have to just be very basic with the fundamental understanding. And some of that comes back to almost thinking if you went, again, I think the easiest explanation is think of a person that you'd engage with, whether it's a developer, whether it's a dentist, whatever it is that you're not familiar with. And like, well, when I show up and talk to that person, what do I want to know? Chances are your people that visit you, your patients, want to know your version of that, right? They're coming in with their version of those questions to you. And often they're pretty basic. Now, occasionally you get an engineer that wants to know every single thing. Have at it, go for it. Or, I sat down with that basic explanation with a few people reviewing MRIs, and the person's like, I'm a physiatrist. And I'm like, wonderful. Now let's dive deep. Now you've given me permission to dive deep. But as I say, I don't need to punish everybody else in that process.
No, of course. That's great. I guess a lot of that is then just knowing the person in front of you as well. I guess you have that very small percentage of, I guess, what you call like analyticals who just love research and they love numbers and they love facts. And I guess those are the sort of people that are more likely to absorb the information that we've learned from school and so forth.
That's right.
Perfect. And with yourself, what are the main places, or do you have main people, or do you have a mentor that you worked with that has given you all this information?
That is a very, very good question. So I will say many of the people that I would say would be mentors to me are actually in the marketing and business world more so than in the healthcare and research world. However, I'll throw out a few resources. I'm happy to name them, but specifically on the research side, the biggest things for me are using, and I recommend this for everybody, is that if you go to, and there might be some international components of this that I'm unaware of, but I believe it's worldwide. If you go to PubMed, you can register a free account, and then you just tell PubMed what are the keywords that you want it to look for in the research. So that might be something like spinal manipulation, chiropractic, kinesiotape, whatever you're interested in. And then PubMed will email you every time a new research study is published with one of those keywords. Now, that doesn't mean that every study is free. Some are open access, some you have to pay for, but I get an email every Monday morning from PubMed with a half dozen studies that basically tripped my keywords over the course of the last week. That is by far the easiest and best way to keep up. Now you still got to like dig it out. And, I of course recommend that people check out podcasts like this, my podcast, to stay up to date with exactly what's going on. But if you want to like do it yourself, I absolutely recommend registering a free PubMed account, putting in your keywords and having it auto search. Let it do the hard work for you.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great. I know there's a lot of students that will absolutely love that information and the fact that they can do this and get the research that are required, which is great. So thank you for giving that information. That's perfect. Another topic that I wanted to dive more into. I know we were talking about earlier about you're taking, I believe it was talking about like taking action steps.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to dive a little bit more into that?
Yeah, we have a saying within the Smart Chiropractor company that I'm involved in. It's results follow actions. So I think in a broad level, are you taking the action steps necessary to get the results that you want? And this can apply to like everything in life. I think about it from a marketing and business sense, but it's going to apply to health as well, right? And to me, some of this also gets down to, I'm going to say, I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent here. I think measuring the actions before the outcome. So I'll give you an example of this. Monitoring your collections in your practice every month is an important thing to do. You need to know how much money's coming in the door, but that is a lagging indicator, meaning it is what happened over the last month that results in that money. So if the money is short at the end of the month, That's not good, right?
No.
So my suggestion would be, yes, you want to monitor that, but what are the action steps that's a result? The money is a result of the service that you delivered over the course of that month. So what are the action steps you can take to ensure you get that result? Okay, well, I know if I'm my goal is to collect X amount from a business perspective, I need to see X amount of patient visits. Pretty straightforward. And you might have, other ancillary sales and things like that, but I'll keep it simple. X amount of patients pay money to come in to see healthcare providers. So, what's that dollar value and how many to reach your goal? Okay, great. Well, to see that many patients, are you taking the action steps week in and week out to get the result, which is what you want at the end of the month, so to speak? So are you utilizing email? Are you getting out in your community? And that's really backing into it. Like, if all you do is look at collections as an example here at the end of the month, you could be happily surprised or woefully surprised. But I always say, there's no such thing as hope in marketing. Hope is not a strategy. So hoping it works out at the end of the month is a really bad strategy. But if you say, okay, we have our email system set up where we know we're going to get 5 reactivations per week there. We are going to do 2 events per month, and we anticipate that we'll connect with 10 or 20 people there. And now you're taking the action steps necessary, where then at the end of the month, you're like, great, guess what? The outcome is what you wanted, not by chance, but because you took the action steps along the way. And often I think all of us as small business owners, I'll speak for myself and all the businesses I'm involved in. We all, I think, have this weird tendency to get scooped towards like the result, right? What's the number? How many new patients did we have this month? How much revenue did we collect? And it's like that should almost be a foregone conclusion, where it's not even, it's like, yeah, of course we did that because we did the steps all month long to get that output, right? And it's the same in health and everything else. If you just hope your way towards being in better physique, that's difficult. But I can guarantee if you do 100 push-ups a day over the course of a month, you're going to see the outcome you want a lot different than if you're just like kind of waited until the end of the month and saw if you had muscles or not. And when we put it in healthcare, us as chiropractors are always like, duh, but so few of us apply it to how we run our businesses. And I would say the same thing tying back to referral relationships as well. You can hope to build them, but this gets back to systems and processes. What action steps are you sending case notes? Are you updating them with research? Are you taking meetings consistently to build relationships? If you're not, you might get there on accident someday, but I'd rather get there for sure on purpose a lot quicker. And that really gets down to just fundamental business processes, which quite frankly aren't very hip. They're not very they're not like sexy, right? It's like, what's the day in and day out work to get what you want, and how do you just make that into bite-sized chunks that ensure your success? And I think all of us as business owners could really, I'm doing this in my businesses literally today, and tomorrow I've set aside 3 hours with my COO and co-founder in Smart Chiro to dive into these things. So nobody's immune to it, but it's not magic. It really is. Everything in business should be systems and process driven. And quite frankly, often in healthcare as well. Not all the time, but often in healthcare as well. We go through an exam. We don't just like make it up every time. We know what we're going to do. We know the questions we're going to ask. And then that guides us to what path we're going to go down. So often we're trained to do this in healthcare, but we very rarely apply it to our business. And that's a fundamental challenge. And in my opinion, one of the reasons why so many chiropractors tend to have those struggles in building and growing a practice.
And I'm just absolutely blown away with just all the information that you've given. It's absolutely incredible. With chiropractors who are just starting out, maybe they've started their own business. Obviously, I know you spoke about getting out into the community, I guess trying to make people aware of who you are and what you can do and how you can help. What would be the best way? Where would be the best place to start in regards to going out into the community?
Yeah, It can vary. So I think it depends upon where your skill set is and what you like to do. In general, I would say the old marketing saying is your net worth is equivalent to your network. So, how many people know who you are? It is about attention. If nobody knows who you are, it's difficult for them to become patients. If everybody knows who you are, it's a lot easier. So at a base level, it's about attention. Now I say it varies because I do think it matters on the skill set. For example, at this point, I feel pretty comfortable being able to shoot video. So, that took a while to build that skill up, but I feel very comfortable. I could shoot videos all day, every day. But if you bring me to a small networking business event, I'm invisible. I'm not outgoing like that. I'm going to so while I know other people, they do like business networking, breakfast and things like that with, the insurance salesman, and they're wonderful at that, but you put them on video and they can't get a word out. So part of it, I think it's understanding where your skill set is. If you love connecting with people in person, one-on-one, and that's your thing, do that. If you are into and you're spending a lot of time on social media, you're already posting things, you're comfortable with the apps. I don't care what app it is, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. If you're comfortable with any of those and you like using it, do that. So to me, it is really starting out, I would say lean into your strengths. So, and many people, if they really evaluate this, they'll know pretty quickly. I knew forever that if I show up in a group of 8 people, I'm invisible. I'm happy to hop on stage in front of 5,000. And I say this as an only child. I say I refuse. Some of my business partners crack up because I say I refuse to compete for attention. I either want all the attention or I'm invisible. So so for me, doing things where I get to speak on stage or shooting videos and things like that, it works to exactly what I'm comfortable with. But if I'm in front of 8 people and I'm trying to make myself known instead of somebody else, I'm horrible. But I have some of my best friends in the world that are the best at that. But they can't shoot a video to save their life. So I don't think the medium is as important as from a new provider perspective as understanding where your strengths are and leaning in, quadrupling down. As my friend Noah Kagan would say, who runs a company called Sumo, it would be he'd say, you want to do more of what works. Like you don't need to always have shiny new object syndrome. Like, what are you into? What are you passionate about? Where's your skill set from a networking perspective, and do it, and then do more of that, and then do more of that, and squeeze everything you can from it.
That just makes so much sense, and it's interesting to hear this because I remember when I was in school, I think we'd done like a very short module of business within chiropractic. It's not an area that we explore in absolute depth, especially when we are studying. It is more so learning about the body, the technique, and basically just learning how to help people live healthier through chiropractic care. So in terms of learning a business and how to develop a business, where would you advise someone to go? Where would they start out?
That there's a lot of great resources out there. So one is, I think you can just go on YouTube and type in business questions, and you're going to see tons of videos by tons of people with great information. You'll see some stuff that repels you, you'll see some stuff that attracts you, but YouTube is a tremendously fantastic resource. I think from a marketing perspective, there's of course people like Gary Vaynerchuk and Frank Kern and people like that you'll resonate with some, you won't resonate with others, and that's great. So YouTube is just a great resource to learn about business fundamentals and see what's out there. More specific to the chiropractic space, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a plug to, I think, the blog that we've created on the Smart Chiropractor at smartchiropractor.com/blog. We have hundreds of articles related to marketing mechanics and business within the chiropractic space specifically. So there's a variety of really, really great resources, out there. I'm a big physical book reader. Like if I showed you right here, I have thousands of books. So
Nice.
I'm a big physical book reader. And I tell you what, if you're starting out and you don't, like searching business books on Amazon, look at eventually you can go into the deep stuff that not that many people have seen, but like, just look at the reviews. I mean, Amazon is a great tool as well, where you're like, gosh, this business book has 7,000 reviews and it's 4.9 and it's related to a sales process. And that's what I'm trying to learn about. that's probably a pretty good book on it. Like people
Nice.
are brutal on Amazon. They have no
Yeah,
problem
yeah,
telling, if something's not good. So if
yeah.
something has thousands of reviews and, again, hundreds or, hundreds or thousands of reviews and they're awesome, those are probably great places. So I think YouTube and Amazon searches just around business, around sales, around marketing, the more specific you can be, the better, response you'll get in terms of your search. And then in the profession, I'd recommend everybody check out the Smart Chiropractor blog, totally free, tons of information, hundreds of articles. So
Awesome. It's funny you talk about YouTube because that's actually where I found you. And this was many years ago when you brought out the video on Joe Rogan when he called out his chiropractor, and I was just a bit like, oh man, like I can't believe this because I can imagine a lot of people got triggered by that. And it's funny how very shortly after that I came across your video and I was listening to it and I was just like, oh my God, yeah, that just makes so much sense. And it gave me more confidence in actually listening to that. So yeah, very grateful that you put that out, because when someone who has such great influence on the public, kind of speaks their opinion, a lot of people can jump on that bandwagon, so to speak. And yeah, the fact that you brought out that video, it was great. I shared it a lot and I showed a lot of my friends. So and they were just like, yeah, it makes so much sense. Um,
Thank you.
with the time frame that we have, we are slowly running out. And what I'd like to do before we finish, if I could just take down, if you could let people know where they can find you, if they want to get in contact, if they want to follow you on social media, what's the best places to get hold of you?
Yeah. So my personal brand is the evidence-based chiropractor. So evidence-based-chiropractor.com, or the podcast, the evidence-based chiropractor, the YouTube channel, pretty much everywhere as far as that's concerned. My email is Jeff, Jeff, at the evidence-based chiropractor if anybody wants us to reach out directly. And then I'm the smart chiropractor. So the smart chiropractor is one of my other primary projects as well, so to speak. So the smart chiropractor has a bunch of fantastic resources, but if anybody wants to connect with me personally, the evidence-based chiropractor is probably more of my personal brand at this point in time. So whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or the podcast or directly through email, that's the easiest way.
Amazing. Cool. Well, I just want to say, Jeff, again, thank you so much for your time and sharing all your knowledge and information. You're doing absolutely great things for the chiropractic profession. So I'm extremely grateful for that. And I know that everyone who listens to this will just have an abundance more knowledge after it. So I just want to say thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's awesome to connect, and I'm humbled to that you paid attention. And once this comes out, let me know. I'm happy to share it with my audience as well. I love the fact that you're taking action. That's one of the most important things, as we discussed today. So kudos to you for getting out there, messaging people, and doing the work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, as soon as it's ready, I'll let you know and we can get it out there.
Right on.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. I'll let you carry on and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Have a great one, Jack. Thank you. If I can help you at all in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Will do. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care, Jeff.